Here.
Councilmember Bilbray and Mayor Dedina are absent.
Okay, we have a special guest tonight for the pledge of Valerie from Dr. Imperial. And I'd like to just say a few words about her teacher, what her teacher has said about this remarkable young woman. Um, Valerie is a responsible and hardworking student. And I'm saying this in full because there are lessons here for all of us. Um, she is kind and treats everyone with respect and is always willing to lend a helping hand. It is not uncommon to see her explaining a concept in math or language arts to another student. Valerie puts effort into all she does. She's an avid reader, a creative writer, and a problem solver in math. She perseveres and works through even the most challenging problems, looking for multiple ways to solve them. In addition to her hard work in the classroom, Valerie is a leader at Barry. She has been on safety patrol for the last 2 years and is lieutenant this year. She was also the vice president on the Barry Student Council last year. Valerie goes above and beyond to make Barry a great place for students, and we are lucky she is a Barry Bear. So please come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to reorder the agenda so that similar items would be heard in their order. I'd like to move item 5.2 before item 3.1. Or is it 4.1? Before item 4.1. And I'd also like to remove item 2.7 from the consent agenda for discussion at the end of the agenda. Can I get a motion to do that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
We can go back to electronic vote. Fix that. I'd now like to invite each council member to speak with respect to disclosure of community announcements, reports, assignments, and committees, starting with Mr. Patton.
Okay, it's been a busy few weeks. I've met with here at City Council community room is called Community Conversation, and the sheriff, fire, public safety, public works, a lot of residents, school district employees. We're all there discussing how we can make Imperial Beach and keep Imperial Beach such a safe environment. And there were a lot of statistics shown, and it is saying that we are a very safe community. And I want to thank all those public safety people here right now. The next meeting is November 1st at 6 p.m. here at the community center right here. South County EDC had a reception. It was for elected officials among, as well as community business owners and residents, about how we can make business in Imperial Beach and San Diego County thrive. And it was a great reception. Of course, the auto show was one of the best auto shows I've ever been to. I was walking around, I was busy doing other things, and I just got stuck there, just kept walking around looking at all these great cars. And it was amazing. It was a great family-friendly event. It seemed nice and calm. People were happy. All the restaurants, all the shops were benefiting from a lot of people with foot traffic. just this last week, I went to Teachers Community Awards at South Bay Unified School District at Mendoza School, and that was one of their first ever community awards, and it's going to be ongoing. There's going to be, I think, 3 or 4 more, and basically they're awarding awards to not only teachers but staff, volunteers, community members that help out at the school. And if you know somebody, please nominate that person. And where the next time these awards come up, maybe they can get the award. It was very beneficial and rewarding. Um, I just got a flyer about a haunted barn, and that's going to be with the Border Patrol down on Saturn, 1802 Saturn, on October 21st and October 22nd. And entry is 1 can of food, and it's going to go to the San Diego Food Bank, so it's for a great cause. And finally, I'm almost done here. Military Appreciation Day, November 12th, here in Imperial Beach, from 12 to 4, Dunes Park. My dad was in the military, and I know a lot of people in this town, military town, and I want to just tell everybody, come on down. You'll be seeing signs like this. So again, that is November 4th, or I'm sorry, November 12th from 12 to 4 at Dunes Park. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. And of course, our guests in the front row, special invitation to you for Military Appreciation Day. Councilmember Patton is right. There is a lot going on, and he and I kind of have well, we all do have a divide and conquer mentality, but seems like Councilmember Patton beats me to every event. He is a busy man. One thing that he doesn't do that I do for our community is the Transportation Committee. I am there as appointed as the chairman's alternate. And there's a couple of things that I have to point out that we have been tasked to remind the community about. So the call boxes that are throughout the county have more or less outlived their technological life. So they are proposing to remove them. It will be a savings of, let me see, I wrote it down, about $144,000 a year to remove those. So it is a good savings. Because of those call boxes being removed, as you all know, there are some dead spots in the region. What came to my mind was the Strand. However, that is not being targeted as an area to leave the call boxes, but an area that is being targeted so that they will remain is the rural areas in the back country. So, and that was really an item that was really questioned by the Tribal Chairmen's Association. So we'll see what's happening. Initially, there will be 202 removed almost immediately. Another thing that the Tribal Chairmen's Association did at the last Transportation Committee meeting was an update on their planning. And what's especially important about this is that the tribal planning groups can obtain federal dollars and access federal dollars that Caltrans cannot. So that these two organizations and that the tribal organizations finally now have a position at the table at Caltrans, or excuse me, at Sandag, is critically important. At the October 13th MTS meeting, I am our representative. I am the chairman of the Accessibilities Committee. And one of the things that is happening is there is that we have a new ADA eligibility certification provider. What this is going to mean is a big change in people that can use the access transportation. The whole process is going to change. We're looking at a potential savings of $120,000. I did ask to have it read into the record. MTS, City of Imperial Beach as well, the Navy as well, we all pride ourselves on our outreach. But to me, the most robust outreach we have to do is the change in this certification program. And this is our most vulnerable demographic. So staff promised me and was directed to really, really this time do their very best in the outreach. Our disabled community has a much harder time utilizing public transportation than an able-bodied person does. And as Mr. Councilmember Patton did, I too want to do a recap of events, and there's a special reason why at the end of it. So I did want to talk about, I did receive a letter from Cindy Gomper Graves, who is the CEO and president of South County EDC. The letter is addressed to Andy Hall and Karen Odermatt. And she says, on behalf of the South County EDC, I wanted to extend our gratitude for a job well done. The elected officials' reception was a wonderful way to show attendees the positive changes that have occurred in Imperial Beach. The event allowed business and community leaders to see firsthand the transformation of the city. Several people at the event noted the contrast between their last visit and what they saw last night, expressing disbelief in how beautiful Imperial Beach is currently. So to receive a letter like that from Cindy Gomper Graves, I thought was especially nice. Karen Odermatt, President of the Chamber of Commerce, thank you. Andy Hall, and again, that was a great event. And it was what a beautiful night it was for the people who were there. You couldn't ask for a better Chamber of Commerce weather. And Karen, thank you for ordering that for us. I too did attend the Auto Fest. There were over 300 cars here. And what was especially cool about that was that some of the cars were actually on the pier. First time that's happened. So that was a very different twist, one we all appreciated. On the 15th, our fire department is here with us. They had their open house, and it was a truly wonderful resource event for members in the community. They had so many different aging, San Diego County Aging Access was here, just so many agencies. And it was a good opportunity to showcase our life-saving apparatus and, of course, our first responders. So, Chief French, thank you for a well-executed event. Last night, the Imperial Beach Historical Society had an open house. We had just a great time. The reason why I wanted to recap these events was that the Historical Society was at each one of these other events. So at the elected officials reception, to have a Historical Society booth was the first time that's ever happened at one of these receptions. And the response from the elected officials throughout the region was tremendous. And I'll bet they're going to follow suit. You'll see more people, more cities in the region doing that. On October 29th, Imperial Beach Chills and Thrills. This is an it's a Halloween fun zone. It's going to be at the pier on October 29th. I hope you can take your kids there. It's going to be something different, something fun. Please come in costume, and there'll be lots of candy handed out as well. And again, not again, but on October 27th, Chamber of Commerce, their chamber networking breakfast at Dempsey Holder Safety Center. The guest speaker is Gary Gallegos, who is the CEO of Sandag, and I'll bet we can guess what he's going to be talking about, and that will be the importance of ballot measure A. And I hope all of you can attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Bragg. And now, Councilmember Bilbray, you know what I have to go through when I follow Councilmember Bragg after her comments. Do you have any comments? Okay. I have just a couple. I attended the League of California Cities annual conference. City manager and I were there, and we attended a number of really outstanding workshops. For me, I'd say the highlights were, as usual, the workshops on city finance, and I see some smiles in the back row there. Our city administrator, he loves me for this. And also how to get citizens more engaged. And some of the examples of what cities are doing are things that we are already doing. I think our open city open house was a good example. And probably we could have been one of the presenters because of how well that works in our community. Once again, I attended a session on how to engage youth in civic activities and in city government through internships, typically involving high school students, with a teacher doing a summer civics course for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and the kids doing internships in the afternoon with someone with various departments in City Hall. I've really long wanted us to try to do something like that here in Imperial Beach. And I think the problem is I just haven't had the, and I'm making a confession here, time to really champion it and put all the pieces together. But if there's anyone in the community, in the audience, who would like to work with me on something like that, please see me after the meeting or email me. Same thing with fellow council members. So that's, oh, and I should say without, in connection with the League of California Cities, that I was just appointed to be the vice chair of the League's Policy Committee on Housing, Community, and Economic Development, which is quite an honor. It sort of puts me in the leadership team of the League of California Cities. And the League is kind of a behind the scenes organization. In some ways, it's a statewide version, not quite of Sandag, but it's kind of behind the scenes and does some very important work regarding the relationship between cities and the state legislature and the state government. Its primary mission is to ensure that cities have their local prerogatives for our local elected officials and our local communities protected from undue state encroachment on local prerogatives and things like land use planning, especially, which is what this very committee focuses on. So I'm very, very honored to be asked to join that, the leadership of that committee and the leadership of the League. At this point, I'd like to ask if the city staff has any reports.
Excuse me, Mayor and Council, we will be asking for a special holiday on October 21st to commemorate the birthdays of the city manager and the city clerk. Seeing that probably won't pass because it wasn't on the agenda, we just wanted the fire chief to come up and give us a quick update on the open house that happened on Saturday. Not hearing a motion.
I'll second that. I just wanted to expand a little bit upon what Lori Bragg had to say. Last Saturday, we had our fire department open house, and it was attended by Robert Patton and Lori Bragg and a lot of the city staff. It was a great event. We had a great turnout. It was well received by the city, and it's one of those events that just keeps growing and keeps getting better. And I'll expand upon about that a little bit. It's not only a fire department open house. We like to demonstrate what we do. So we had an auto extrication where we cut a car and showed how we could get somebody out of a car in an extrication or in an automobile accident. We had the sheriff's department had their K9 unit out here. So they showed how they could apprehend, a felon. And what we did, Jason Bell, one of our fire captains, was the guy on the receiving end of that dog bite. Dog didn't like him. He spit him out. So he had the dog sleeve on and spit him out pretty quick, but he just loved that thing.
I love
So, and one of the highlights of our thing too, we had Mercy Air, one of the medical transport helicopters, landed on IB Boulevard. Everybody got to see that land and take off, and then they got to sit in it and look at it and see what they do as a resource for our city and for the county. A lot of the tables and informational booths, we had the Burn Institute, we had the library doing some demonstrations, we had Crown Cove Aquatics, Boys and Girls Club, Boys and Girl Scouts, we had County OES, the Aging and Independent Services, SDG&E, UCSD Burn Center. We had Mercy Hospital had their stroke and heart prevention booth out there. So it was all informational, health oriented. And we had fun things for the kids. We had a jumper out there and a face painter, and we had 911 dispatch on the fire side out here telling people how, to properly call 911 and what they're looking for and things like that, and all they go through. We had other fire departments. We had Coronado Fire came out with their ladder truck. We had Cal Fire, Fed Fire. We had the lifeguards came out and with their booth and all that. We had county sheriffs, Border Patrol, and a lot of different organizations from this area. So it was a well-attended event. And if you missed it, wait till next October and we'll have one again. So don't miss it next year. One last thing, tomorrow at 10:20 on October 20th. So at 10:20 tomorrow is the Great California Shakeout. So if you're in your office at 10:20, duck, cover, and hold on. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Chief. Moving on to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any speaker slips for public comment, open public comment?
No, Mayor Pro Tempore.
Okay. So now we move on to the presentations item on the agenda. The presentation tonight is on State Route 75, the intersection and traffic management plan update by Captain Scott Mulvihill, who is the Navy Base Coronado Executive Officer. And we welcome you, sir, to Imperial Beach to give this presentation. And we also acknowledge that Lieutenant Cloutier is here again, and he is the construction office manager for the coastal campus. So we welcome you also, sir. Please.
All right. Well, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm Scott Mulvihill. I'm the base executive officer at Naval Base Coronado. Thank you for allowing me to come down here and talk to you for a little bit. So for a quick update, since I last spoke with you in August, and that's when Dan was down here talking about construction, we've been busy, as you might imagine. So the USS Nimitz is back in town. So we had a third carrier in port for a little while. They're out at sea right now, and they're doing carrier operations, getting a bunch of qualifications done on pilots who haven't been out in a little while and get some practice. They'll pull in this weekend. They'll actually swap out more aircrew, and they go out for another week. So they'll be operating off our area for a little while. So it's exciting having them back in town. We also had the Secretary of the Navy in town today. So he was in town and spoke at the SDMAC, and his discussion, as you might imagine, is about the importance of this area for national defense and for our Navy. So it was great and motivating to hear him speak and talk about all the things that are being developed in this area and how this area will remain a powerhouse for our United States Navy. So it was great to hear from him. I also want to thank you for the elected official reception. That was a wonderful event, beautiful day for it. And it was great getting out there and meeting some people. So thank you for that. Finally, we have Representative Scott Peters visiting our coastal campus next week. So he's coming up. He wants to lay eyes on and walk the ground with us to see how the construction is coming along. So we'll be hosting him, and we've been answering some questions for him as he's trying to figure out exactly what's going on up there, how's it going, how are we looking. And the good news is it's all coming along for us. I'm going to divert a little bit from my primary brief and talk a little bit about the horrendous traffic that we've seen on State Route 75 over the last 2 weeks. It's been noticeable to us. I addressed the Coronado Coastal Complex on Monday. We spoke about it there also. I want to let you know that we are looking at it. Roughly strand traffic every day is about 26,000 cars every day. We believe there may be an increase, and we've really seen it primarily over about the last 2 weeks. We anticipate that it's not only due to additional computer apps that are out there, handheld apps that people can figure out the fastest way to get from here to wherever they need to go. And unfortunately, the strand might be the right answer for them. But we also believe it's also an influx from the easier crossing of the border. So we've gone from a 4-hour delay at the border to a 30-minute delay. So the efficiencies that we're seeing in the border are now costing us because we're getting more traffic. So those are some of the things we're looking at. More importantly and more tangibly, today, this morning, Wes was out at the intersection with our public works team. And this is the 3 intersections in front of the amphib base where we've heard lots of consternation. We do not own those traffic lights, but we are out there with the City of Coronado engineers and with Caltrans engineers trying to figure out what is going on here and what can we do. They made adjustments today to the northernmost of our 3 lights that we believe will start seeing impacts tomorrow. So with those guys out there watching what was happening, we believe that we have made some positive impacts on it, but we're going to keep monitoring it. We're very aware of it. I see that traffic every day when I go to work, and we're going to stay engaged on it. So I wanted to address that before we went any further on it. So if there's no questions on that, I'll jump into my main brief.
One question.
I'm ready, sir.
I'm going to thank you because I drove right by, it was probably West, Caltrans, and a group at that northern light today. And I just was happy to see that there's some positive steps being taken care of.
Yes.
And, you know, I didn't yell out the window or anything, but I almost did. But thank you. I think if we get those steps going and figure out the pedestrian crossing, how that best can be managed, and you know, these little steps are going to make a big difference for everybody.
I certainly believe so. And we felt the pedestrian crosswalk was the problem, but upon inspection today, we actually think it's the timing of the northernmost of those 3 lights that's really screwing it up. So we're hot on it, but like I said, we don't own it. Caltrans owns it, but we are working with them to try to figure out the best way to do this. All right, so with that being said, we'll go to my first slide. He gave me an operation on how to do it. We'll see if I can pull, oh, there we go, I got it. All right, so we would like to talk about the approval that we received from Caltrans in relation to the brief that I provided to you on what the interstate is going to look like, what State Route 75 is going to look like, starting as early as November 7th. So we received permission to narrow it down to one lane, both north and south, due to our construction that's beginning there. So in the very near future, we're going to have 6 large military construction projects going on in that property. And as we have arranged with you, the construction trucks will be using the northern entrance to this property. So as we look through that, the good news is Caltrans has approved the project that we briefed you on as we briefed it to you. We are here to start the 2-week clock for public awareness and public engagement so that people start hearing about this. So as I mentioned, I briefed Coronado on Monday. I'm briefing you today. And we'll continue an outreach program that I will discuss here a little bit further as we go through here. This traffic management plan will help us mitigate traffic concerns during our heavy construction period. As I talked about, it may start as early as 7 November. That's the earliest that we would start this. That's more than 2 weeks of notice, and we're still working through a final permitting, but we anticipate it's going to happen. So as we continue on, everyone knows in this area where I'm talking about. So we have that northern entry control point on State Route 75 as we go into Coastal Campus. And as I said, we have 6 construction sites that will be starting here. So a bit of an eye chart on here, but what we want to show is what will happen. The real main point of this is that the limitations to the lanes occur during off-peak hours. So from 9 o'clock to 1600, 9 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon is when this lanes will be limited. We anticipate the speed limit sign of reducing to 55 miles per hour. Those will be unbagged effectively at about 6:30 in the morning, and they will go to about 5 o'clock at night. So they're not 24 hours a day. They will be managed by the construction workers, but they will be up there. So that is one of the mitigations to slow the traffic down as they get closer to it. There'll be ample signage to see that the left turn lane is for heavy construction trucks only. So if you're heading north on State Route 75, the far left lane will be for heavy construction trucks to do their left turn into the construction site only. Trucks that are traveling from north to south, they'll be able to make an easy right-hand turn without impeding traffic as we go through here. We anticipate during max traffic, during the heaviest periods of construction, it may be as much as 100 trucks per day during that time frame. And that is why we want to have that dedicated turn lane for them to keep the traffic going beside them. So it's not slowing down traffic as we go through here. For the standard vehicle, so this is not the cement truck, it's not the big truck, it's the guys going to work who are the construction workers. If they're heading northbound, they will continue up to the K's, they will turn left at the traffic circle, and then they will come back down. We do not want to have any queuing of traffic in that dedicated left turn lane that is for the heavy construction. We believe this will help mitigate that, and all the other smaller passenger vehicles will go up, come back around, and away they go. They know it, it's in a contract, and we're going to enforce it. We do not want to cause queuing down there. As I said, we're going to have a pretty aggressive public outreach program. We wanted to discuss it with you first and let you know that we're rolling this out. And as you can see, we're going to be pushing this out on our Facebook page with Caltrans, on 511, and in newspapers also. So we're going to do as good a saturation campaign as we can to get the word out as we unroll this. We are still working on what the final design for that entrance will look like. So we have not yet reached the 50% design. We have an idea that I will show you here in a minute that we're working towards. My direction to the Public Works team, as I work with Skipper Barnett, and by the way, he sends his regards. So Steve Barnett is still stuck on his 10-week training program on the East Coast. So he turns me loose in public with crossed fingers that I don't screw it up. So he sends his regards. So we will show you some of the designs that we looked at and that we're required to look at by Caltrans. So the first one that we looked at is required by Caltrans. We are required to look at the use of a roundabout as the primary entrance for this area. We are not doing this. There's a couple different reasons we're not doing it. We do not have the amount of space required to do it properly, correctly, and safely. And if we did, we would be impinging on the bike path and on some endangered species areas, and we just don't own enough land down there to do this correctly. So in coordination with Caltrans, we have agreed that that's the one thing we're not going to do. So what I'm showing you right now is we looked at it, we're required to look at it, but we cannot do it. What I want you to take away from this concept design is that we are doing our best to make sure that queuing that happens on the base. So the 800-foot line that we have depicted there is the distance from the entrance up to where the guards are. So it's, if you come around the roundabout, and I have my little laser beam here, but we want to have as much queuing on the base off of the highway as we can. So with that 800 feet with 3 to 4 lanes of traffic in the morning, we're gonna be able to get a lot of cars on the base and off the road. We are still working on the exact depiction of what that intersection is gonna look like. We are going to make sure that we respect the scenic highway aspect. So we're not trying to make it obnoxious. We want to make it, we want to respect the area as much as we can. And we're incorporating that in our design as we go through it. We're also concerned about light pollution for, as traffic is heading down that hill, making sure we're being careful so we're not blinding the residents of the caves. So we're taking things like that into consideration as we go through here. We're also gonna have some signage out there about being a good neighbor and not revving engines as people are coming on, zipping onto the highway or stopping or turning if there's traffic lights there. And then finally, we're still making sure that we can incorporate a bike stop or bike lanes, pedestrian crosswalks, and also a bus stop so that we can try to encourage as much mass transit as we can or anything to get people out of individual cars as we go through here. So those are the competing priorities that we are working through as we develop our final project description. So that being said, that is what I wanted to present to you today for your consideration and to let you know that we are rolling this out and that we anticipate by 7 November, you'll start seeing the restricted construction lanes as we continue. So that being said, I'm ready to field questions. And if it's a hard question, I'll have Dan answer it because he's very good. But if that's it, that completes it.
Thank you very much, sir. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Bragg?
Thank you. And Captain Mulville, thank you so much for being here, and you as well. And you didn't mention Wes, but we know him by first name around here.
We love Wes.
We do too. And Wes and I were saying before the meeting that we've seen you folks more in the past 6 months than we have in 6 years, and it's been a welcome. You're always welcome in Imperial Beach. There are some issues, obviously, with the traffic plan. My question is, how nimble will you be if it's a total disaster?
I can tell you, we do not want a total
Okay.
disaster, so that is going to slow us down and crush us.
Okay.
So I can tell you, we've assigned many people to this project specifically. And one of my notes in here is that this is a living document. We are going to make changes, and if we see it's a disaster, we cannot suffer through a disaster. We need to make it responsive, and we need to make it so that we can get our guys to work. We need to get the construction trucks on work,
Right.
and we want to be good neighbors. So this is not locked in stone. This is our starting point, and we're going to see what we need to tweak as we continue on with it.
Okay, at what point do we declare it a disaster? I mean, we're gonna, I'm just, that is a heavily trafficked.
I believe a phone call from Andy Hall to us
Okay.
saying, this is a
Okay.
disaster. You will get my complete attention and we
Okay,
will get hot
okay.
on it.
Thank you. I really do appreciate the attention that you gave to having the queuing up go on the base and not the Strand and the traffic. I really do appreciate the turnaround further up for the passenger cars to come, enter in a different way. Seems like you have really reached out to the city of Imperial Beach and heard our concerns, and you have all along. And I know that's going to continue. I just wanted to give you my thanks for that, because this, believe me, the two communities, Coronado and ours, are looking at this. Coronado can have their say, but here in Imperial Beach, so many of them, Councilmember Patton is going to be probably our first link. You'll probably hear from him first before you hear from Andy Hall. And we're expecting that, Councilmember Patton, and he will. There are several concerns that I think you have addressed and taking the steps necessary to address them. Again, my concerns are that if, come November 8th or 9th or 10th, that we're, deer in the headlights look, that this just didn't work out. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully this will be the best case scenario. I think you've made every attempt to do that. And again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I can tell you,
Okay.
we are putting a lot of effort in this. We
I know
want to
you
get
are.
it right. We want to succeed, and we want to be good neighbors as we do it.
Okay. When Scott Peters is here, will he be seeing this document as well? Or,
He is not asked to see this specifically, but when we'll be standing up on top, pretty much where the guard shacks are, showing him, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we're working on. We'll talk through it briefly. If he has more questions about it, we'll certainly answer his questions. His staff is not asked to see this, but as part of our outreach program, we're going to be sending it all over the place.
okay. And I did appreciate your comment from the Secretary of the Navy that this area being a powerhouse for the Navy, and that certainly is becoming true.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Captain, I just had a question for you. If you could put the one of the last slides up regarding the turning arrangements. No, not that one. The one that. the the last one.
Very last.
There.
Okay.
I think the question why you're considering this, the concept of what to do long-term with the intersection, one of the key questions, especially for the morning commute, is the northbound treatment of the left turn. You've already, I think, taken a great step by having the passenger vehicles go up to the Ks and make a U-turn. So my question is that under consideration for as a permanent long-term solution, or is there a thought that there's going to be a very long left turn lane to avoid tying up that left lane in the long run?
Great question, sir. So what we're looking at for the long-term solution, we have two really viable courses of action on this. One is that there's a intersection, much like we see in front of the Ks, where it's a dedicated left turn lane and there's unimpeded, the right lanes are always going. The drawback to that is we need to have a way to get pedestrians, bikers, and potentially a bus stop across the road. So we need to balance those two conflicting demands out. So if we have that free riding northbound lane, now I'm stuck. I haven't met the demand signal for a bus stop. I haven't met the demand signal for a pedestrian crossing. So we're trying to balance that off. The other option is we put a stoplight there heading north. That's no fun because now traffic has to stop, but then I do facilitate the bus stop and the bike lanes and the pedestrians. We are working on it. We don't have the answer yet, but those are the competing priorities that we are trying to balance out. What won't happen is that we will not require people to go all the way up to the Ks, turn around and come back down for the long-term solution. Hopefully that answered your question. So I don't have the final answer yet, but those are the things that we are trying to balance out.
Again, we thank you very much for coming and giving us the presentation, and all the best.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take my hat.
All right. All right, we're going to move along to the consent calendar right now, and I'd like to thank you all, gentlemen, very much. And I'd like to entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 through 2.6 and 2.8. All in favor, please please push your vote button. Where's mine, by the way?
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm happy to present to you an update to the city's ordinance for its stormwater management program. The purpose for this update is to make minor provision changes as required by the stormwater permit. But more importantly is, since we are making provision changes as required by the permit, we are going to do a comprehensive review and update to the ordinance, which hadn't really had a very significant update to it in probably a couple decades. So in the front slide, I included a couple photos of kind of remind you what's included in our stormwater management program. It's everything that ranges from the regulations on how new development projects are planned to code enforcement, to education and outreach, to managing flood control, to doing water quality monitoring programs. So the city has had the city is regulated by a stormwater permit issued by the regional board. It was issued in 2013, and this set in requirements for the city to develop 4 important guiding documents to manage the city's stormwater program. And these are ones that have already gone to city council and you guys have already approved. But a reminder, these 4 documents are the Imperial Beach Jurisdictional Runoff Management Plan, the San Diego Bay Water Quality Improvement Plan, Tijuana River Water Quality Improvement Plan, and the Imperial Beach B&P Design Manual. I stacked them on my desk there just to see, to remind you what you approved. These guiding documents are what guides our stormwater program. Our stormwater code just delegates the adequate legal authority for these programs to be implemented as already outlined in these guiding plans. So since we're already required by the permit and we're on the last step of our stormwater permit to ensure we have adequate legal authority to implement our stormwater permit, since we were reviewing our code, we decided to do a comprehensive review and update and actually remove a lot of unnecessary language that was in our code. So if you printed out our stormwater code right now, it would be 80 pages long. So we did a review and condensed it back down to 17 pages. So it's a more reasonable, streamlined code. It's in line with what the rest of the cities and jurisdictions are doing in San Diego County. And I'll briefly go over what are the changes that these code changes are being proposed. The main chapter of our code now is chapter 8.30. Pretty much everything that was proposed through multiple sections of the code is now wrapped up into one section. Changes, cleans up old provision languages, and updates new provisions that were specified in the new permit. Basically, we took the permit language we got in our stormwater permit and inserted it directly into our code. Those are the new changes we added. We also updated our municipal code for 15.54, which relates to construction stormwater BMPs. And the major changes that we made on here, major changes, I mean major improvements, I would say, to the code is repealed section 8.31, which was a section of our code we put in the early 90s that related to setting up a stormwater fee schedule for parcels. Ended up never going that direction, so it's just been a useless code that we've never implemented. And we also repeal section 8.32, which is our standard urban stormwater mitigation plan, which is now has been replaced by one of the big documents that was on my desk, the Imperial Beach B&P Design Manual. And then finally, we updated and corrected all the reference links that were scattered throughout the rest of the code sections. So one of the main changes this new stormwater permit has is that it kind of defines the way new development projects are moving forward. So I just wanted to end with a couple slides of how is this impacting our new projects, our alley projects, for instance. You can't just go put concrete over an unpaved surface anymore. We had to put permeable concrete down the middle and what we call dry wells on the downstream end of it to infiltrate as much stormwater as possible. That's better for water quality. It's better for estuary and San Diego Bay. Similarly, for the Elm Avenue project, we included areas where water that flows along the curb line can now drain through the curb and into a dry well. So instead of having water going into the storm drains into Tijuana estuary, it now infiltrates into the ground. And then similarly for the Bikeway Village project, they had to do a stormwater detention pond, but they've incorporated that stormwater requirements into a nice overlook deck on the project too. So stormwater BMPs also have some nice aesthetics to it, or you can if you design it correctly. So that's all I had, and I'm here to answer any questions you have about these code changes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helmer. Any questions?
New construction and the ones you mentioned, how are the people doing the development taking this, saying these are additional costs that we're going to have to pocket? What's the feedback you're getting?
There was a lot of grumbling at first on it, but the development of the Imperial Beach B&P Design Manual, which in San Diego region, we developed the B&P Design Manual, and then each jurisdiction just put their name on it and passed it as the design. So every agency has the same design. The developers were at the table and coming up with these regulations. They knew what was coming. They knew what was coming 5 years in advance, and worked with the regional board to make it as agreeable as possible. It does add costs to projects, but it does make projects look nicer too, and there's also environmental benefits too because of it.
Yeah, I like how Bikeway Village really tied it into their overview, all in one, and this is the norm. This is what's going to be happening, right?
this is what you can be seeing on all new projects come in. Anything I guess categorized as a priority project, which is if you're replacing more than 5,000 square feet on a 10,000 square foot lot, you're going to have some type of stormwater element on your property. And the city will try to work with the developers to make it look as nice as a bikeway village.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Helmer, thank you for the report. I just wanted to point out that former council member Maida Winter is here and former Mayor Diane Rose, and it was during their tenure, I believe, that this whole thing was initiated. So I'm sure they're looking at this and looking back at where we started and how far we've come, and that Imperial Beach on so much of this was at the forefront. And the way we're doing business now and what that means for our coastline is extremely pleasing, not only for me, but for our residents. And we are really setting the table, I think, and setting the tone for the rest of the coastline, the rest of California. Mr. Helmer, you are probably looked at as, I just can't imagine, what people think about you, because you really are turning into not only our resident expert, but also that throughout the county and the region. And the fact that, yes, it does add cost to the projects, but it's well worth it in the long run. It's worth every penny of it. So thank you for always being on top of this and making these changes. They may seem slight, but taking a document from 80 pages to 17 pages was no small task. And thank you for that, Mr. Helmer, very much.
I would like to add to that, I really appreciate that we've got someone on the team who's got great eyes and can read all those documents without going blind, because you've obviously, you had them on your desk. That means you probably did go through them all very carefully. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for being our expert in this very important area. As I read through this item, it seemed to me that these changes, and I don't want to take a lot of time with this, but so I'll ask it very specifically. It seems that there are some fairly significant changes in terms of obligations compared to the and requirements compared to previously. Have you encountered any new projects that are particularly challenged by these changes, or that you anticipate might be significantly challenged by these changes? And if so, what is that going to do to their timeline for them moving forward?
Well, you're probably talking about projects moving forward in the future, the ones that are in the planning. And as long as you take into consideration the stormwater requirements and you design your project around the stormwater rules, we're not having problems. The problem arises when the developer made a plan a decade ago and they said, this is what I want, but it doesn't fit in with the new regulations, and the new building code updates that you're going to be having now are kind of falling under the same logic on it. Like, things need to be updated and designed around the current codes and regulations. So all of our projects that are saying the redevelopment projects are being designed under this current regulatory structure, so there should not be any delays or problems because of these stormwater rules. It's going to add cost, but that should already be factored into any new future proposed development project coming in into our city.
There are none. Yes. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Imperial Beach, California, amending Chapter 8.30 of the City of Imperial Beach Municipal Code pertaining to urban runoff management and discharge control, repealing Chapter 8.31 pertaining to stormwater/urban runoff pollution reduction charge, repealing Chapter 8.32 pertaining to the standard urban stormwater mitigation plan, amending Chapter 15.54 pertaining to grading permits and plans, and amending Sections 16.12.090A4, 18.84.050, and 19.25.060G1A. Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3.2. I would like to ask City Manager Steve Dush to please provide us with a report on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Steve Dush. I'm going to introduce this particular item as it relates to kind of like the first cousin to the previous item, our building codes. As you know, every 3 years, the California State of Building Standards Commission issues new building codes for the state of California. Cities, municipalities have the ability to take a look at codes and requirements that are specific to their jurisdiction and make any tweaks or modifications that they may need to make based upon whether it's topography, geography, or weather, or any specific conditions related to their specific municipality. So our staff, and today we have Jack Olden, our building official, and Tom Santos, our fire marshal here, who did the heavy lifting relative to reviewing our codes as it relates to these new triennial updates. And after that review, they had identified just some major modifications that we would need in order to adopt these codes. And with that, I'm really going to end my presentation. There are specific standards that if you have any questions that they can certainly answer for you. But again, we would simply ask that you make a recommendation to introduce this ordinance by title only and waive the further reading of the ordinance and schedule the matter for public hearing for November 16th. And with that, we stand ready to answer any questions that you may have. So the bottom line is adopting the state building codes and applying them to the city of Imperial Beach.
Thank you very much. Do we have any speakers slips, Madam Clerk?
No, we don't.
Okay, any questions, council members? Okay, I would ask the Madam Clerk to please read this ordinance. Thank you very much, since you did such a great job last time. I think we're going to run with that.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Imperial Beach, California, amending sections of chapters 15.02, 15.04, 15.06, 15.14, 15.16, 15.18, 15.20, 15.28, 15.32, 15.34, and 15.38 of the Imperial Beach Municipal Code by adopting the 2016 California Administrative Code, Residential Code, Building Code, Historic Building Code, Electric Code, Existing Building Code, Fire Code, Mechanical Code, Plumbing Code, Reference Standards Code, and Green Building Code, respectively.
Thank you very much. I would like to now entertain a motion to introduce ordinance number 2016-1157 by title only, waive further reading in full, and set the matter for a public hearing, second reading and adoption at the regular City Council meeting of November 16, 2016. Motion. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dish. Now we come to where we're going to flip-flop a couple agenda items so that Public Works Director Levine doesn't have to go back and forth between his seat and the microphone. So this involves combining item 5.2 and 4.1, both having to do with the condition of our city streets and the use of RTIP funds. So if you would, Mr. Levine, would you start with 5.2, which actually lays out the condition report on our city streets and leads into a discussion of the extra RTIP money and what you're proposing to do with it.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
I can do that. The first report is a report on a survey, street survey that you allowed added to the 2015, 16, 17 budget. for our conditions of our city streets. And I think will be proud to know or have read that our street condition on average was a score of 76. When it was done 8 years ago, it was a score of 75. By the standards that, and the scoring, it ranges from 0 to 100, with 0 being the worst condition and 100 being the best condition. Streets that this company has surveyed nationwide generally are much lower than 76. And in the Southern California area, the scores are generally between 60 and 66. So you can see that your streets are substantially above what they typically have seen. They do say that, they do say that in order to keep our streets in this condition, we need to continue dedicating, committing money, funds to keep it improved. Just for the paving of the streets on average, using $2015 $2015 numbers, you need to be investing around $1 million a year in keeping your streets in the current condition. If we continue to be doing sidewalks and curb and gutter improvements and so on in various places, they estimated the figure to be $1.2 million per year to keep the streets going. You have invested in the last 6 or 8 years pretty much that amount of money through grants and through our gas tax and through regional transportation improvement funds through Transnet. So if we can continue that, we should be able to try to, keep our streets in a similar condition. But it does take a long-term commitment of it. I'd like to show a couple slides in here just to kind of give you an example of how it looks graphically for the city. Can you give me the next one? Is it me? Okay. So this is a representation showing in categories of units of 10, with 0 being the lowest score and 100 being the highest score. And you can see the predominance of our street conditions are 70 and above, and 60, even 60 and above is pretty substantial. Which one did you push? This one. This is another way to look at it. In their report put a name to each category, and in the context you see there. So excellent is 85 to 100. Very good is 70 to 85. And in their staff report, I outlined the percentage of streets that we have in each category. So the vertical column, a vertical line on the left there is a percentage of the network in the area. So for instance, the very good 70 to 85 is a little over 40% of our streets are in that condition. I'd like to also just take you through a couple more slides to look at the low end of our category. We had no 0 to 10. We had one section, which is Palm Avenue transition from Old Palm to Highway 75, listed as very poor. And as you might know now, that used to belong to Caltrans up to 2 years ago. And it's been relinquished to the city, but it's now been incorporated as part of the Sudbury project. So it's not really an issue that we're going to have very long. In fact, a lot of it's not there anymore. Looking at the next group, that's also at the top. You can see Palm Avenue coming out from Delaware. And that again was part of one of the streets that was relinquished to the city a couple years ago and is part of the Sudbury project. So other than that, there is one street, one block on Ebony in the 300 block. And the 31 to 40%, the fair condition, you can again see. And again, there's another section of the old Caltrans transition from Palm Avenue to Highway 75 is listed in that category. And there's a couple sections on Imperial Beach Boulevard down the lower right-hand corner. And Citrus Avenue is up in the upper left-hand corner is listed there, which is a street that we'll be doing the sidewalk infill on. That design is actively underway. We'll be meeting with the neighborhood soon. And so we'll be doing a pavement improvement along with the sidewalk improvement. At least that's the plan. So there's not too many there. There is some. And the number gets a little larger as you get higher up. And I won't show you anymore. I just wanted to give you kind of a sense of where we're going to be focusing our work on. We're suggesting or asking that you adopt this or accept this study as a city plan that we can be using for improving our streets and allocating our funds towards those improvements.
Thank you very much for that report. Do we have any speaker slips, Madam Clerk, on this item?
No, there are none.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levine, for this report. I just wanted to remind colleagues that this is a $42 million investment that we've committed to on our roads. And I think it's one of the basic things that we should be delivering to our community. They ask for good roads, good schools, good sewer system, and we deliver that. And it comes at a cost. So I would urge my council colleagues to continue the commitment of $1 million a year on this. I would also like to bring something forward as a policy, perhaps, not tonight, but something to think about. Continued preservation of these roads, and one of them does include our bus stops and being able to, at the extremely busy bus stops that are used frequently, more frequently than others, a lot of cities are incorporating a concrete pad at those bus stops. That will prolong the life of that road right there. It's something I think that we should be looking at as a policy. And another issue that we have is the continued use of parking on our streets by some of our residents that live in higher density projects. They have parking lots inside those projects. For whatever reason, many of them use our streets to park their cars on. So perhaps working with our apartment owner association to encourage those residents to utilize the provided parking spaces. And I believe that removing those cars from our streets will also help to prolong the life of our streets. It's a good report, Mr. Levine. The numbers are staggering, the percentages are staggering, and how we stack up. And that isn't here, but you all drive around the county. You know we've got pretty good roads when you go in certain parts of the region, including downtown San Diego, where the potholes are so bad. When I'm down there, I'm afraid that if I fall in, we should probably call an emergency vehicle. The potholes are so deep. Another portion on Camino del Rio South, I use in public transportation. The road is so bad, you can't even talk on the phone. You can't crochet. You can't read your book because you're bouncing around so bad. You cannot focus. So, Mr. Levine, I do believe we do maintain our roads in a good state of repair. And thank you for your work, your continued diligence on this. And I know our residents appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could respond a little bit to
Sure.
her comments. When we've done the most recent projects for overlay like Palm Avenue, I instructed and have installed or had the part of the construction a thickened asphalt in the vicinity of the bus stop. I was trying to maintain the aesthetic look of the asphalt. Therefore, I asked the engineer to design it the way I did it. If I can certainly change that direction, but that's where I've been taking it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Levine. I do believe the concrete would last longer than the asphalt. So if we, can have an engineer maybe give us some guidance on that, that would be great to find out for sure if that is in fact true. I know the city of San Diego is and throughout the region, I see them.
I think it may be, I don't know the reason. I just know that I asked them to thicken it to be the equivalent of the concrete. So
Okay.
whether that pans out in the long run, I guess I'll
Okay.
find out.
Could be a cost comparison that needs to be done as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the report, Mr. Levine. So I've been walking around neighborhoods and walking on a lot of streets, and occasionally I'll get somebody to say, "How about my street? When is it going to be done?" And then looking at your, your poor and marginal, I would imagine those are the ones you're going to be hitting. Did you have a priority? You're going to be hitting those next.
Sure. Right now, our funds well, let me rephrase that. Right now, we're working hard on Elm Avenue. And once Elm is done, then we'll be focusing on the next set of streets and be coming back with you for a proposal. The intent is, as we did with the 2008, we started at the lower scores and worked our way up. And what was in the 50s and 60s 8 years ago is basically what we've been doing recently. So we'll plan on doing something similar. At least my idea is to do something similar. We'll start at the lower scored streets and working our way up. Depends on the funds available.
Okay. And then I know something that irks you and me and probably everybody else is seeing a brand new road just poured, beautiful, and then we have a utility or a plumbing, and weeks later they're cutting it and then digging it and then patching it. So what steps are you taking to avoid that from happening?
Well, we've continually had meetings quarterly with utilities and try to coordinate our work with their work. Their planning is not as far reaching as ours. So it's sometimes we end up with work coming in, but I'll give you an example. I mentioned we're working design the Citrus Avenue between Rainbow and Alabama. At a recent meeting I had, Cal-Am was there, and they went back and talked, and they said we need to do upsizing of the water main on Citrus. So they are diverting funds to upgrade that this fall, so that should all be done, and when we start our work, hopefully this spring. So there is some coordinating of it. A lot of it is development, and it's hard to control development coincident with our street work. So you've seen a lot of tear up of our Palm Avenue in the 200 block with all the development that's been there. They tore that street up 2 or 3 times shortly after we put that in, a year or 2 afterwards. So it's hard to know when those developments are going to do it and coordinate it. If we know, we're going to have to provide service. We have put in a sewer lateral from the main to the property line. That's kind of ends up at our expense, because typically the developer would put that in. But if it's going to save a street, and I know approximately where they're going to put it, and I know then I'll put a lateral in there for them.
And then when they do the repairs, do you have like quality control? You go check it, make sure it's smooth. I've noticed on Second, there were some rough ones. You must have gone back and said, this isn't good enough. They've repaired it.
That, and many times the utility companies will put a temporary surfacing on it until they can get enough area to make it cost effective for them to come back in. We do have a standard trench repair design that's unique for us. Well, it's actually not anymore. It used to be unique. Now it's incorporated in this regional standard drawings. So other cities have a similar one, but that tends to hold up better than what the standard drawings used to show.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Again, thank you for doing an outstanding job with our streets. We do, I think, have the best streets of any municipality in the county.
It starts with the council.
And
You guys
well,
are the ones that give me the money to do it.
Well, you're on top of it. You always have the priorities ready. So when there is some money, we hit the top priorities and we avoid going to the down end of the quality of streets, which is really due to your work. So thank you very much for that. So I would like to entertain a motion to accept the report on the pavement management analysis just given. Um, uh, and to accept the report for use by the city staff to propose biannual city streets capital improvements program projects. Let's vote, please.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Okay, we're going to move right quickly into item 4.1. This is the public hearing part of this subject involving a resolution that amends the Regional Transportation Improvement Program fiscal year project budget and the allocation of carryover funds. Mr. Levine, would you like to proceed with this part of the report?
Yes.
And I think we can move fairly quickly through it since we've all got the background now. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Quarterly, the SANDAG asks for or provides for an opportunity to update the street improvement plan through funding from Transnet. This time of year, they have determined or rectified how much money they actually got from gas tax or from their Transnet funds. And so there's usually some additional money left over or additional money that's short because they estimate for the year, they estimate how much we get. And then at the end of the fiscal year, they calculate the exact amount that was picked up. And so in our case, there was another $300+ above the estimate. So that we're adding that to our budget. And while we're doing that, since we have this recently completed pavement management study showing where our streets are and which ones need repaired most, we are updating that list of streets that SANDAG maintains for Transnet dollars of streets that should be repaired, need repair. And so in this case, this is a 5-year window that we're looking at. And the streets that you saw in the first presentation are listed in here, plus the streets that were the 40 to 50 category, which I didn't show you that number. Additionally, there is two kind of amendments to that. There's an alley in the upper left-hand corner, which is parallel to Seacoast Drive, just to the east of Seacoast Drive, but north of Palm Avenue, that is in pretty bad shape. And it's not a dirt alley, but it's not a good alley either. And you'll see that blue stripe there in your screen representing that alley. I've added that in there as one that we would like to get done. Additionally, Imperial Beach Boulevard, a few months ago, you authorized the city to apply for an active transportation improvement plan grant for widening the sidewalk, making it more bicycle accessible, and improving the pavement section. So, and that goes from Connecticut to Seacoast Drive. And so you'll see that is highlighted as one, because if we get the grant, we're going to have it into this plan. So that section is in there. And then the areas to the east, several sections to the east of Connecticut Avenue is in the 40 to 50 range index number. So I included the entire street through there. Otherwise, I think the rest of these are pretty much just what you would find when you look at the study that I just reported to you. So what we're asking for is approval to adopt the resolution that adds these streets, includes these streets into the 5-year Transnet improvement plan, and to allocate the 339,000 of overage that we had coming from the end of the fiscal year to this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Do we have any speaker slips on this item?
No, Mayor Pro Tempore.
Thank you.
I see a few on there that I'm happy they're on there. Tell me about thorn, spruce, and Donix. It's not quite a street, but it's the little alley at the end of the cul-de-sac where people walk through the little thoroughfare. So, where does that fall?
That's not a street. It's just an easement. It's a drainage easement that runs between the properties and the end of the cul-de-sac to the next street. So those easements are not in here. I can tell you that Chris has applied for a grant. It's called the Prop 1 grant to incorporate, which if we get it, will accompany the ATP grant that we applied for, and assuming we get that. But it includes creating those drainage areas so they're BMP compliant. So it won't close them. I still need to have access through them, but we'll make them so they're not dirt and make them look a little better probably.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out to my colleagues in the audience as well, there's a real cadence here with these projects. And you can see that we're applying to SANDAG for active transportation grants. We're applying elsewhere for grants. These are what really enable us to do what we do in the community. It takes a lot of coordination to do this. You can sit here and say, oh, it seems, well, here's a grant, here's a grant. This is not a haphazard process. Just wanted people to be aware of that. There's a lot of coordination going on. There's a lot of future thinking going on as well. Mr. Levine, you do it well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you again, Mr. Levine. I'd like to close the public hearing on this item, and I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2016-7743, authorizing city staff to submit attachment 2 to SANDAG, designating the street segments in attachment 2 as projects eligible for street resurfacing and ADA pedestrian bicycle improvements between fiscal years 2017 through 2021, using the revenues from the Transnet Local Street and Roads Fund. Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to item 5.1, which is the initial findings from the ad hoc zoning committee.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could, just before the Assistant City Manager gives a report, I wanted to clarify and that we did provide you, and I think you've got it in front of you, some last minute information, some last minute language changes. And basically what we did, and that was my oversight, I do apologize for the council. The recommendation was to implement changes tonight. And I meant to say initiate changes tonight. Of course, it's a process to change our zoning ordinance. So I wanted to clarify that and apologize to the council for giving you late minute information. But I just wanted to explain what that was all about. So,
Thank you very much. Mr. Dish, would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. As you know, y'all had created this ad hoc committee back in December to take a look at our multifamily zoning that occurs in our mixed-use zone districts. And following the creation of that committee, there was the deliverable that was to be produced, and that's what we're going to talk about this evening. So it's always good to start the purpose. What was the purpose of the committee and why? Why was that created? And so this was the sort of the phraseology that was identified when the city council had created the ad hoc zoning committee. And I'll just read it so we're all on the same page. The purpose was to scope the issues relative to multifamily residential development within mixed-use zone districts and prepare an initial issues report and forward this report to the city council for your review. So that's where we're at today. So one of the first steps that the committee had taken was sort of to develop an approach to creating that deliverable again being the report that's in your packet. And I did make some copies if there's anybody in the audience that wanted a copy of them. I've got a few extra right here if you'd like one. Great for reading in the evening as well. So again, the ad hoc committee met and there was a series of meetings. And it really boiled down to four very broad issues. The first one was, again, exclusive residential development within mixed-use zone districts. And just for everyone's sort of baseline edification, a mixed-use zone district is one whereby you, in a single building, include residential and non-residential uses. The other broad issue that was identified was the location of commercial geographically. The third broad issue was height and intensity. And then the fourth related to zoning interpretations. And so here is the cover of the report that we had. And so I'm just going to dive into the report really quick and give everyone a basis of bearings here. So some of the first meetings that we held, there were, again, these issues, and they gelled together near the end, but it became very evident that it was a lot easier to discuss them based upon their geography. That geography effectively being some of our mixed-use zone districts. And the map that's in front of you right now and on the screen shows our CMU2 zoning district. And that, again, is along Seacoast and Palm Avenue. And some of the issues related to that particular geography, and I'll just go back again so everyone has an understanding here, was a lack of development standards for the exclusive residential when the commercial or the mixed-use zone districts were created. There wasn't a very clear understanding of some of the residential development standards that we have in our residential zone districts, things like open space, setbacks, and whatnot, transition components. And another issue was the measurement of active commercial uses. What does that mean? So a mixed-use zone district or a structure has a sort of look and feel about what that structure looks like along the street. And the measurement that we have in our current zoning talks about a square footage, not necessarily a linear footage on how a building faces the street, but a square footage. And so that was another issue that was identified that needed to be looked at and remedy. The other issue was the location of commercial, and then height, density, and intensity. So after a number of discussions and thoughtful analysis, there were three primary recommendations that the committee had identified to address that particular geography. And the one recommendation was to utilize the R1500 standards for when somebody wants to develop an exclusive residential product in a mixed-use zone district. And our R1500 standards are our most dense multifamily residential zoning district. And just for everyone's sort of knowledge and understanding, R1500 stands for 1 unit per 1,500 square feet. And what that translates out to in an acre being 43,560 square feet, is just under 30 dwelling units an acre. It's like 29.02. So that's the sort of density that was recommended from the ad hoc zoning committee. The other recommendation that came out was to take a look at zoning interpretations. With every zoning code in every city, there's always going to be an interpretation. And so what we have identified in this one was to continue to address interpretations on a case-by-case basis, because every piece of property is different, every development is different, and it really provides the latitude of the decision makers to take a look at that particular application, the modification that's being requested at the time, and really evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. It gives the city council the utmost latitude in order to take a look at land use decisions in your community. The third recommendation for this area was to clarify the active ground level commercial measurement that I had talked about earlier, making it a linear measurement instead of a square footage measurement. So, and this is important because you could have a structure or a building would just have a front door, and then all of the use in the back of it and everything else along the streetscape could be sort of a dead zone. And so what this would remedy was would be to create an active pedestrian realm along our streetscape, along our major commercial corridors. So the second area that was identified in our review was the CMU1, and this geography is located again along Highway 75 and portions of Old Palm, as you can see on the map here. It's the red color. Some of the issues that the committee had dealt with were, again, not unlike the previous geography that we talked about. In actuality, they were all the same, but for one very major one. Right now in this area, the property that's west of 7th and east of Florida has the ability to do exclusive residential with without commercial on the ground floor. The committee took a look at that and had recommended that because this is one of our major commercial corridors, and we're pretty well tied into what the geography of Imperial Beach is. It's not like we're going to be annexing property. We really can't go west. It's kind of tough to go south. Same thing with north, and then east, of course, is the city of San Diego. So we're pretty well hemmed in. So it was important to make sure that we maintained the area to have a viable commercial corridor. And so with that, again, the recommendations that came from the committee, 3 of these were just like the previous one. Again, utilize the R1500 standards for exclusive residential in mixed-use zoning districts, clarify the active ground level commercial measurement, continue to address interpretations on a case-by-case basis, and then the additional element here, different from the area along Seacoast, was to require active ground level commercial along the entire stretch of Highway 75. So with all of that, there were a number of issues that were talked about, and there were 2 phases that were identified. Phase 1, there was consensus amongst the ad hoc committee and the interested participants throughout the process. Phase 2 was a much broader policy discussion, and I'll get into those details here in a moment. The first phase would consist of a recommendation from the committee to pursue and identify a process to initiate the following 3 potential amendments. One would be to require that if an exclusive residential project was located within the CMU 1 and 2 zones, those geographies that we identified earlier, if they were going to propose, if a developer would propose an exclusive residential project, that they would need to utilize the R1500 zoning district regulations and not be eligible to process a CUP, a conditional use permit, to increase the height. The second one would be to require that all development fronting Highway 75 have active commercial on the ground floor. And then the third would be to amend and clarify the measurement of active commercial to be a measurement of linear frontage and not one of solely just square footage. The second phase is a much broader policy discussion, and it includes, but is not limited to, the following themes that the committee had identified. One of them is height, whether there should be a look at 2-story limitation imposed along Seacoast Drive and Old Palm, an element or a theme to revisit permitted uses in certain zone districts, a look at revising the incentives for conditional use permits, and a notion to look at the demonstration of financial or a market viability study when a project would come in proposing commercial, and the commercial may be sort of on the margin. So again, the ad hoc committee had stated that it would be prudent to have this sort of second phase discussion be a part of the city's upcoming local coastal plan amendment, as the findings from this update will impact the land use and the zoning. And it's also a discussion in the city's big picture and economic health. Because again, these are very, very broad and heavy policy discussions. And the ability to take a look at those when we review the local coastal plan and address issues such as sea level rise and just again the overall community health, that it would be prudent to have that discussion of these sort of zoning parameters within that larger discussion. So with that, the recommendation that's before you this evening is that the city council receive this report and direct staff to initiate phase one outlined above, which was the process to, and I'll just go back here real quick, require exclusive residential projects within the CMU 1 and 2 zone districts to utilize our 1500 zoning, require all development along Highway 75 to have active commercial on the ground floor, and amend the measurement for active commercial to be a linear frontage and not one of solely square footage. So with that, I'll end my presentation and open it up for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dush, for that. And I know Councilmember Patton and I, who were the subcommittee on this, appreciate very much your support and that of our city manager on doing the work of the committee. And probably even more, we really appreciate the citizens who were involved with us and who gave their time and their ideas, their involvement on this in this effort to essentially, and these are my words, not approved by our city attorney, close some unintended loopholes in our zoning code, commercial zoning code, and so that we can avoid some of the problems that we've seen develop in recent months with proposals and even projects. So we very much thank you for your engagement, community members, and your paying attention to this and staying with it, especially your patience in waiting this amount of time for the report to finally come to the city council. I will say, however, you know, we did present this report, or an earlier version of it, quite a few months ago, and there were some issues on the city council with the way the report was framed to ask for use of emergency powers to implement essentially these same considerations that are before us right now. And so we went back to the drawing board to re-examine those issues. And now we have a process that's outlined on page 10 of our committee report that involves numerous opportunities for public input, including with the Design Review Board, the Tidelands Advisory, if relevant, to Tidelands areas, City Council for preliminary review before it goes to the Coastal Commission, and then back again for a final review. So each of those will be a public process that gives plenty of opportunity for this first phase for more public input before we move forward. I'll say that some people would like this to be done quickly so that these loopholes that were unintended get closed quickly, but others would like a deliberative process for everyone to have a chance to weigh in before we move forward. And I think that's the decision from the first city council meeting where we considered this, was to proceed with the second approach rather than the first. Councilmember Patton, would you like to make any comments? Do we have any additional public speaker slips, Madam Clerk?
Just the ones provided.
Okay, great. So then the order is Maida Winter is our first speaker. You don't need to speak? Okay, and her comments are support staff recommendation as amended in the last minute agenda item number 2. So then Ted Winter is not present. I don't want to make assumptions that he would echo your views. Oh, he does support. Right. Okay. The next one is Diane Rose, please.
Good evening. Diane Rose, 614 Imperial Beach Boulevard. Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs, council members, city staff. I'm here to speak in support of the ad hoc committee recommendations for the commercial zoning. First of all, I want to thank the council subcommittee, Mayor Pro Tem Spriggs and Councilmember Patton, and also our planning director and our city manager for all of the hard work and time that you've put in on this. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of your efforts as well as the community. I know what a job it is, believe me. So I really, really appreciate your leadership and particularly appreciate the results of the recommendations. Very succinct, very straightforward. Great job on putting that all together. As you all know, I was appointed to the city council to fill in for a period of time after the untimely passing of our colleague, Councilmember McLean. And during that period of time was when we were revising the commercial zoning code. And the reason for that was we wanted to streamline the development application process, and we wanted to promote greater commercial and mixed use development in the commercial areas. But with the practical application of the zoning changes, some serious flaws that were in the ordinance have come to light. And one of the key components of this new commercial zoning to really activate the commercial areas was to create a menu of developer incentives that would maximize commercial development by allowing additional height above the ground floor commercial that would then accommodate 2 full stories of residential above the commercial. The way that our height was before at just the straight 30 feet, if you had an active commercial space, there just wasn't any way to get 2 floors of residential above that. So we created a menu of incentives so the developer could apply through a CUP process to get that additional height and then be able to have the 2 floors above the commercial. But something happened in translation, let's say. So now we have an unintended consequence where 100% residential development in the mixed use zone could take advantage of those commercial incentives and increase their height to 35 feet or 3 stories. So, having been involved with that restructuring or updating actually of the commercial zoning, I can absolutely attest that that was never the intent of that particular council, that we wanted the incentive to only be applied in the case where there was commercial on the ground floor. And subsequently, the recommendation to have 100% residential, which you can't have in the mixed use, going by the R1500 development standards, I think is an excellent remedy for that particular item. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ms. Rose, would you like another minute? All right,
I'm concluding right now.
Okay, Michael has yielded his time
I'm
to you.
concluding right now.
Okay.
So that to me is the most serious of the flaws that have been identified with the application of the zoning. I mean, concepts are great, but when you actually start applying it, sometimes things come to the fore. So that to me was the most serious one, but there are several others that have been very clearly and succinctly identified by the committee and the staff. And I just want to say that you've done a fantastic job, and I wholeheartedly support the recommendations and the process that's been outlined.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you. And thank you for your time devoted to this and your expertise. Next speaker is Sandra Billhart. State your name and address, please.
Hi, Sandra Brillhart, 186 Elm Avenue. I don't always skip presidential debates, but when I do, it's because it's to support the recommendations of the Ad hoc Zoning Committee. Um, I had the opportunity to participate on the committee, and I wanted to echo Diane's gratitude to both council and city staff who worked on the report. I thought it was an excellent job. They did an excellent job. Long ago, in a land far away, I was a municipal zoning officer, and so I can attest to the work that went into the report, and I can also attest to the recommendations of the report, both professionally and personally. I really think they're appropriate. A lot of thought went into them, and I think that they will remedy the loopholes that exist in the zoning ordinance and still allow us to preserve our small town atmosphere here in IB. In talking to a lot of people after the report was issued, there was a lot of community support. I circulated a petition, and we received a lot of several signatures on it that I wanted to submit to council as well. So again, thank you. I wholeheartedly support the recommendations of the report, and as I submitted to there were several other community members who did as well. So thank you again for your cooperation.
Thank you very much. Ruth Cole, please.
Hello, Ruth Cole, 326 Elder Avenue. And I would like to echo everybody's thanks because this is a lot of work, and thanks to Councilmember Spriggs and Councilmember Patton for leading the committee. Thanks to all the council for working on this, and definitely city staff. Thank you. So I support the recommendations of the ad hoc committee. I participated, I think, in the last meeting, and that was very informative. Diane Rose, former mayor, brought a lot of information, things that I wasn't aware of all the work that had gone in initially to set up the mixed-use zoning. So, yeah, and I am a business property owner on Old Palm Avenue. So I was particularly appreciative of being able to have a voice and what some of this and become informed on the zoning in the area. I support the recommendations because I don't think it should be all residential in a mixed use area and then give the residential developers the ability to go higher and with more density and fewer view corridors. So I was part of the original Prop P movement in the 90s, and I still, as a property owner, I still believe that that's something that should be done. It should be, if it's mixed use, it should be mixed use. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker slip is that of Michael Carey, 862 4th Street. And he just wants his statement read, and that is, I am thankful to the council for creating the ad hoc committee and support its recommendations. So with that, is there any further discussion on the council? Mr. Patton?
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Dush and staff. The time that you put into this was amazing. Thanks, more importantly, to all the residents that stepped up late last year and hung in there through this whole process and are here tonight. I see many in the audience, so thank you for being here tonight. It's very important. I was first contacted a little before December last year by a group of citizens who really had some big concerns, and I just went to a meeting and didn't really know exactly what that was. They invited me, I came and heard them out, and this is the inception of all that one meeting. And so the citizens got together, and it's funny what a group of citizens can do. They could really change things. So I think that was amazing. The ad hoc committee, council members, community members was formed December of 15, Mr. Spriggs and myself. There's a sense of urgency to clean up the language. And you've heard this, I just want to kind of repeat it, because hearing the scientific part of it, of all the numbers, and then just hearing it like what's really happening here, and is very important. It was a 10-month process to get to this point. I remember Mr. Bilbray said government moves slow, and this one moved super slow, but I've seen us move super quick too. So I think we need to find a balance here. There's definitely the language in the zoning code that, as Ms. Rose mentioned, unintended consequences that weren't originally intended by our revised commercial zoning. And this sense of urgency was to get it done before additional projects slip through. And that's why we're all here tonight, and they're here tonight. Committee met several times, and we all agreed unanimously, say that 3 times, for tonight's proposal. This first step is one in a process to make our zoning more reflective of our general plan, zoning goals, and residential development. If you want to look at it this way, building 100% residential using commercial zoning is trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And it's just not what we want. The community has waited long enough. Now's the time to make this right. Now's the time to get this process started. From what I heard tonight, these folks are here for the long run. I'm here for the long run. If you look at the Imperial Beach logo, classic Southern California, we want to keep that. And with that, I move that staff recommendation to accept the report and initiate phase 1.
Thank you. The ad hoc committee did exactly what they were tasked to do. And I too am going to use the words of our colleague Diane Rose. They addressed some flaws that appeared. The term loophole is extremely offensive to me, and I would recommend that we stop using that. There are flaws. In the spirit of true transparency and authentic vetting, I did not see anywhere who the ad hoc committee was. I think we owe it to our community to let them know the people that donated their time. We're talking 10 months of their time to get to this point. So I think it's important that we know who those people were. They are the authors of this, and they should be proud of what they've done, most assuredly. You know me, I'm an honest girl. I was hesitant to do anything with this tonight. And the reasons for my hesitancy were, we have a council member who's not going to be with us much longer. We will have a new council member. Our mayor is not here. So those were those issues, those absences in council members on this dais it gave me cause for concern. However, looking back after 10 months, because of that concern, do I want to stop the process? I mean, there was a point where I was like, this needs to come back when we have a new and fully elected council. However, I have a sense of what, of how my colleagues feel. We talked earlier about there's a cadence to some of our projects, and there's a tandem. There's an approach that we're doing. So I would like to recommend that, and I know our city manager, Andy Hall, is planning a retreat. I would certainly recommend that as part of that retreat, there is a component and this retreat is for our council. We haven't had a retreat in 2 years. In light of the fact that we do have a newly elected mayor, we will have a new council member, that we do have a segment of our retreat to be dedicated to zoning and the implications of zoning, be part of that. The three recommendations that were identified, I think are spot on. Truly, when I look back, during that time frame, and I'm looking at former council member and Mayor Diane Rose, when we were first handed the document of the revisions in our zoning, it was this, I kid you not, it was this thick. And her and I looked at each other like, you got to be kidding me. So we waded through that, and and because of the immense size of that document, yes, there were some flaws. And I think it's a classic case of, that's what I said, but that's not what I meant. So I certainly can support our recommendation here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bilbray, would you like to make any comments? Okay. I will say that I remember in 2010 when the workshops on the zoning plan were taking place in the community room with all of the poster boards and all. Mr. Bilbray and I both attended a couple of those workshops, and we're keenly interested in what the new commercial zoning proposals were going to be. And I've personally followed it very closely, and I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Bragg, that there was a lot to digest, and different people have different ways of expressing something that happens that you didn't intend. And I think it suffices to say that we are fixing those issues with these recommendations tonight. And so I would like to, since we have a motion and a second, to proceed to a vote right now. Shall we vote?
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
All right. We have two more items on the agenda tonight, item 5.3 and item 2.7 that we pulled earlier. So at this point, yeah, they are. They're very exciting, everyone. You've hung with us this long. Item 5.3 has to do with awarding a professional services agreement for sewer system master plan study. Mr. Levine, I assume that's going to be your item. Would you like to take us through it?
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, should I proceed or should I wait?
Sure.
Okay. I'm sure everyone here is well aware that there's been substantial development within our city. And back in 2008, we initiated a study to determine the adequacy of our sewer system. And at that time, there were some parts of our sewer system which we knew were old, and you've invested a substantial amount of money to try to improve some of those things, particularly lift station improvements and repairs of the sewer lines. Last year, you allowed us to update that and or more than update, determine whether these recent developments have created a situation in our sewer system that might be bringing it closer to capacity and needing additional work. And that report came out in January, stating that there were main lines that were over capacity, and sewer pump stations that were at capacity, or in one case over capacity. We are asking you tonight to allow us to proceed with the next step of doing a master plan for the city to determine what improvements need to be made and developing a cost estimate of what those would be consist of. Um, Considering we've got sea level rise showing that our sea oceanfront area is in some number of years is going to be a problem. We've got some hotels that are looking at being built in the city, or at least asking to be built. An additional development on Seacoast Drive. And we think it's appropriate to do a comprehensive master plan and determine what needs to be done and what are some options for making our system sustainable for the next 50 years. 50 years is my number, but I think that's fair. I'm suggesting or asking, proposing that council award a contract to Michael Baker, engineering firm, who is the same person, different company, who did the original master plan and holds the sewer model for our city to perform those tasks that I just mentioned to you. And the cost for that they've asked for is $93,175. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you may.
Do we have any speaker slips, Madam Clerk?
No, we don't.
Any questions? Yep. Councilmember Bragg.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levine. I do have a couple of questions. This will be citywide. There's not going to be a certain focus on certain areas or, okay. So it will be
Citywide, yes,
citywide.
ma'am.
Okay, so the last one was done in 2008. And as you pointed out, there have been a lot of changes. As part of their study, will they also be looking at potential development and what the impacts may be?
Yes, the answer is yes, to the extent that we can forecast where development might fill in, and what the size of those developments might be, that is included in this study.
Okay, because there are several that we know of. The
Yes,
Ninth and Palm, Bicycle Village, Bernardo Shores. I mean, there are several huge impacts that are, that our system is going to be looking at. I did not see, perhaps it was in there, I didn't see it, a length of time on this, from when they initiate their study to
Yeah.
when we will actually see a finished product.
the report, we hope, which can be done in 4 to 6 months to get a report to you, and with a recommendation of alternatives of what they might consider. Hopefully we'll come to you at the same time with a recommendation of which alternative, or at least one for you can debate, and the estimated cost for it.
Okay, you did mention something that was really, I think was really looking into the future, was sea level rise. So do they have a model that they will bring to us from maybe a study they had done on other coastal communities that would be a similar fit to Imperial Beach? Or-
You have been presented, to my recollection, a study of the sea level rise and the impact on our ocean front and how far back that may impact off the current seacoast area.
That is
And that will be
correct.
considered as part of this study. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes,
I,
ma'am.
I don't remember that report also included the impact to the sewer system.
It did. Well, it mentioned that that was an issue that would had to be dealt with.
Okay, so
think that's the extent
let
of
me
it.
just, cut to the chase here. So I would be looking at a little bit more in-depth impacts on the sewer system in light of sea level rise, and I hope that is a deliverable that they can focus on as well. So it'll be interesting to see, this is our largest asset. We all know that. And we take it for granted until the day it doesn't work. So it will be interesting. I'm hopeful that our due diligence and our maintenance will be, it'll show. But we know there are some trouble spots. So it'll be interesting to see just exactly what, if it's as bad as we think it is, or maybe better than we think it is. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Mr. Levine.
Any further questions? I'd like to reiterate that I think the water table changes with sea level rise and all of those implications, which were in part, as you astutely pointed out, addressed in the recent report, will impact all of our infrastructure. So that's a very important thing to consider, and I know you've got that on your mind as well. One item that you mentioned in the report, but didn't mention, I don't think, I may have missed it, is the impact of handling the sewage from the Naval Coastal Campus. And I remember from early workshops when this was first discussed that the Navy was proposing to assist us with increasing the size of our mains to accommodate any additional load from there. Is that still a likelihood, and will that assist us in some areas of this project at some point down the road?
You want to take that, or you
Yeah,
want to?
I can take that. Yeah, Mayor and Council, as you know, we have an obligation to provide municipal sewer service to the United States Navy. That the right to do that, or even the legality of that agreement, is being challenged by another community. We feel like it's prudent to include the Navy in this planning, and we have done that. However, regardless of whether or not we end up providing sewer service to the Navy Coastal Campus, this study needs to proceed because we have the issues regardless. But we will, as part of this master plan, include the capacity to provide that sewer service to the Navy Coastal Campus.
Thank you very much. There's no further questions. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2016-7745, awarding a professional services agreement to Michael Baker International for a sewer system master plan, and authorizing the city manager to approve a requisition in the amount of $93,175 to Michael Baker International. Can we please vote?
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levine. The last item is the item 2.7 from the consent calendar that I requested to be pulled and addressed here. And I think there, my principal reason for pulling it is because we have a city ordinance that requires that a contract be competed after 5 years. 5 years is up, and the staff has proposed a 5-year no-compete award of this admittedly important professional services agreement for employee benefits brokerage services. And I'd wanted to discuss that a little bit with staff in terms of whether we could either compete it or have a much shorter time period for a no-compete to allow staff to get through, the current cycle of negotiations and employee contract work. So,
Yeah, Mayor and Council, maybe before Ms. Cortez, who is our Human Resources Director, addresses you, I just wanted to point out that in your municipal code, it says that we would rebid it after 5 years, but it does provide a mechanism for the council to extend that. And so we're requesting that, and Erica can provide you with the reasons why we're asking you to extend that tonight.
Good evening. I'm actually going to address you here at the podium. It's a very uncomfortable desk here. So yes, as City Manager Hall mentioned, the item before you is a resolution to authorize them to extend 5 years professional services agreement with Keenan and Associates, who is our broker of record. My reasoning behind extending the 5 years is because they've been an excellent resource. They've not only has help us with the uncertainties of the Affordable Care Act, but they've also kept us in compliance. They do represent the dental division, the ancillary products, which is a short-term disability, long-term disability, group life insurance. And so they act on behalf of the city when it comes to negotiations. They also participate in the Health Insurance Committee, which is comprised of members of the union and management as well. And mostly because they are commission-based, so there's no additional cost to any of our general fund. Like Mr. Hall said, as council, you do have the ability of waiving that bidding process. And that's my reasoning for asking for this request. Welcome to answer any questions. I do have a representative here from Keenan Associates. Her name is Julie. She's our senior account manager. She's available to answer any questions as well.
Thank you very much. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Hall?
Yeah, one of the reasons that we're asking for an extension is we do want to keep some continuity as we work through the Affordable Care Act. We just completed our MOU with the fire department, and we will, starting in January, have our negotiations beginning with SEIU. It'll be important to kind of keep that continuity going to make sure that we remain in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. As you know, it's changing almost daily, and we're just trying to make sure that we stay in compliance with the new laws that are kind of coming at us on a pretty regular basis.
Okay, so for my colleagues on the council, the reason I pulled this is because in general, I believe in competitive contracts, and that's consistent with the good public policy, and it's consistent with our own ordinances, and that's what we're being asked to shall we say, set aside for purposes of this contract. And I think the reasoning for continuing with the same firm in this case are very good. Right in the middle, you don't want to necessarily compete something when you're right in the middle of working on employment contracts. But to go for 5 years before this is up again, I think is really stretching it beyond the intent of our own ordinance regarding competitive contracts. So I guess my question to you is, if you had 2 or 3 years more, would that be enough continuity to get you through your current negotiations and into a position where you could look at the field of services and do a competitive contract?
Absolutely. If I may just add, when we did we've never had a broker record. We were through Sandpiper, and Sandpiper had a broker, and they claimed to be our broker. But when we had a consultant come in through prior city manager who hired, she came in and did an analysis, an audit of everything, and it turns out to be that they were never looking out for us. There were better rates and out there, for employees and greater benefits for employees at a lower cost to the city. And I was part of the RFP process, and I can tell you that those that did respond had a tag of price to it. Now, however, that was obviously in 2011, services changes. To the answer to your question, yes, that is enough time to prepare and do an RFP process and hopefully conclude with labor negotiations.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments?
If in 2 or 3 years we changed broker, would that mean the possibility of health insurance, dental insurance, all these providers could change for our employees?
We are currently with CalPERS, California Public Retirement System. We obviously there for our pension, and we also contract with them for our health insurance. Initially, when we contracted with Keenan, obviously they're independent from our medical, but they did do a marketing analysis to potentially withdraw ourselves from CalPERS and go out to the market. But because the Affordable Care Act had just been introduced and there were so many uncertainties, we just decided to held back. Now that has been in the discussion. So yes, that would include medical, dental, vision, and any of the other ancillary products that I mentioned earlier.
Councilmember Patton, I think your question might be is if Keenan isn't with us, do they take our health benefit packages with them? They don't. They're just a broker between the insurance companies and the city. So if we had a different broker, we could still access those same healthcare programs that we have today.
Because that's super important,
Oh.
because nobody likes to change
Right,
insurance
right.
or change doctors or,
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's important to everybody, as
And-
you all know.
And that's why we have the health insurance committee. We work on that together.
You know, I want what's best for our city on this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's going to be best overall, and it, you know, let the majority rule here. I understand your point about the bidding too.
My proposal is that we adopt the resolution with just one change, and that's that we move it from 5 years to 2 years to give you ample time to get through the process and move forward with you know a regular contractual process. You know, after that, if you consider that to be enough time, that would be my motion. That we adopt the staff report's recommendation with a 2-year rather than a 5-year contract period. Got a second? Can we vote?
Is it on now?
Thank you.
Motion carried unanimously by those present.
No, it did not.
No. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
I voted no.
I apologize. That is correct. The vote was carried. Mayor Pro Tem Port Springs voted yes. Councilmember Bragg voted no. Councilmember Patton voted yes. Councilmember Bill Bray voted yes.
Thank you very much, and the meeting is adjourned.